What's the deal with multi-unit housing? Is it filled with poor people or something? Well, it's not like it's full of rich folks, that's for sure. At my response, sister-in-law let out her distinct cackling laughter. There's something piercing about sister-in-law's gaze. It's as if she has me in her sights and won't let go. Her demeanor even borders on manic, giving off a sense of danger. My name is Raina. I'm a 24-year-old office worker. I have a fiance who is 12 years my senior. He's a typical, dependable office worker named Hugo. We met 2 years ago when I was a senior in college, working part-time at a cafe. He was returning from shopping, carrying several large bags, so he was hard to forget. I was working part-time a lot to make ends meet, so Hugo quickly recognized me. We exchanged a few words here and there, and as I neared graduation, he asked me to dinner. To be honest, I'd had plenty of customers like him, but with Hugo, I was drawn to his genuine demeanor and accepted his invitation. I want you to consider marriage with me. I'm not rushing into marriage because I'm much older than you. I'm saying this because I want to marry you. On our first date, Hugo proposed out of the blue. Caught off guard, I didn't know what to say, but Hugo smiled and told me, "Sorry for the sudden proposal, but for me, the next step with you is marriage. I fully intend to commit to you. That's all there is to it." His words deeply resonated with me. As we spent more time together going out for meals and enjoying weekends, I found myself gradually drawn to him. 6 months passed before I agreed to be his girlfriend, but there was something I hadn't told him yet. I used to work at a hostess club in Boston during college where I drink and chat with customers for financial reasons. It wasn't shady or something I kept secret, but I hadn't told him because he seemed to disapprove of such work. He said he sees marriage in our future. I resolved to tell Hugo about my past part-time jobs. Absolutely not. On our date that day, I was shocked when he unexpectedly brought along his mother. She was dressed quite extravagantly. A green skirt paired with a red shirt featuring black polka dots. She looked like a watermelon. Turns out the woman I thought was his mom was actually his sister. Upon closer inspection, I realized she was someone I knew. Nice to meet you, or should I say, before I could finish, she cut me off with a curt, "Absolutely not." Catching the hint, I said, "Nice to meet you. I'm Raina." I looked up at her, pretending it was our first encounter. He was oblivious to the tension and said, "I wanted my sister to be the first to know I'm considering marriage. She insisted on meeting you." "Nice to meet you. I'm Carolina. I have been close with my brother since we were kids. I'm so happy to meet you today." Her tone was monotonous and unnatural, like a ventriloquist puppet. When he went to the restroom, she hurriedly told me, "Don't let my brother or my parents find out about that part-time job. You don't want them to know either, right? I'll keep it a secret if you will." Seeing him return, her demeanor suddenly became cheerful, making it hard for me to keep up. We ended up spending the entire day as a trio. She linked arms with him, and they walked ahead with long strides. Both were tall, with long legs, making each step quite large. Being petite, I had to jog to keep up with them. "Aren't you walking a bit slow? You're dressed so plainly, and you're so tiny, we might lose you." Exhausted from chasing after them, I told them, "I'll leave you to it for dinner. Have a good time." I was worn out and wanted to go home. Plus, the topic of my hostess job, which Carolina had promised to keep a secret, couldn't be discussed with her there. We'll have to discuss it another time. As I mentioned I was leaving, he looked a bit disappointed, but sister-in-law firmly grabbed his arm and waved goodbye. Riding the train alone, I started to think about sister-in-law, who used to work at the same place as me, Carolina. She was a flamboyant, larger-than-life character who loved low-cut, flashy outfits. I remembered her loud voice and how she always stood out. Never in a million years did I think she'd become my sister-in-law, because I knew she was a nasty piece of work. This was about 2 years ago. One day, during my part-time job at a hostess club, I found the dress assigned to me had been cruelly slashed. I showed it to the manager in shock, but apparently it wasn't uncommon. They handed me a replacement. Reluctantly, I put it on. It had a deep neckline and an open back. I felt quite embarrassed. To top it off, my dress looked identical to Carolina's outfit that day. Customers laughed and remarked how contrasting we were. The icing on the cake, one customer said I looked like Carolina's daughter and she was the mom. Carolina lost it. After the club closed that night, a drunk Carolina almost got physical with me. It was our madame who intervened. Later, I was shocked to learn that Carolina was the one who'd slashed my dress. Basically, she'd sabotaged me but ended up embarrassing herself. After that, she saw me as a rival because I worked there. I tried to minimize contact with Carolina, but constantly watching my back to avoid her mean streak was exhausting. So I quit my hostess job and started working at a cafe. And now, that Carolina is my sister-in-law. And they looked like such loving siblings. That night, he called me.
Sorry for bringing my sister along today. I didn't get to see you home, so I was worried and called.
No worries, I got home safe. I didn't want to intrude on you and your sister, so I didn't call.
About that, Reina, was there something you wanted to tell me today?
Yeah. I was touched that he seemed to understand what I was thinking from my demeanor, so I called him and told him about the part-time job I had at the hostess club. I kept quiet about my sister-in-law, though.
Oh, really? I'm honestly surprised, but you're not working there anymore, right?
When I confirmed that I had left the job, he seemed relieved. Suddenly, I heard voices in the background of his call.
My sister decided to stay over unexpectedly, he said.
Just as I was about to ask him not to tell my sister-in-law about my past job, he cut in.
Alright, gotta go. I'll call you later.
The call ended abruptly, leaving me feeling a bit uneasy. Later, as I was leaving work, a familiar large woman stopped me. It was my sister-in-law. I had expected her to show up, to be honest. She said, "Come with me," and she gripped my arm and led me into a nearby bar. I was thrust into the bar, nearly falling over. A passing waiter caught me and she snapped, "Look at you, acting so indecent. You're getting married, right? And you're hanging all over other men." I apologized to the waiter and moved away. The waiter mentioned that all the tables were full and led me to a seat at the counter. "Did you tell Hugo about your part-time job?" "I only talked about myself. I didn't mention you at all." "You're lying. Hugo's been acting strange since he got off the phone with you. He usually sleeps beside me, but he seemed annoyed and refused." "They sleep together?" I took a mental note of my sister-in-law's shocking revelation. I didn't do anything. Then my sister-in-law suddenly started talking about the time when I worked at the hostess club. "You knew, didn't you, about the relationship between me, the bar owner, and Gerald? The manager got involved, and Margarita was so angry she cried and stopped everything. I was punched by Alfred. Luisa helped me, but in the end, I was the only one forced to quit." I was overwhelmed by the sheer number of characters involved, so I hesitantly asked my sister-in-law, "Could you run that by me one more time?" In short, sister-in-law had been dating two people, the bar's customer and the bar owner, and got herself into some drama. It was so complicated it could have been material for a soap opera. Wow, that's new to me. So, are you done with both of them now? "Not yet. Neither of them will leave me alone. The bar owner won't let me in anymore. I was so angry I dumped garbage in front of his bar. I keep calling Gerald, but when he picks up, I can't say anything and hang up." I was stumped and didn't know how to respond to sister-in-law's story. It felt like I shouldn't have heard all that. Soon enough, sister-in-law started chugging drinks and eventually couldn't stand up. "I'll call Hugo to come get you." As I was about to call, sister-in-law snatched my phone and threw it away. With no choice left, I asked a staff member for help and took a taxi to the address sister-in-law gave. When we arrived, it was a normal condo, but I ended up discovering yet another unbelievable secret about sister-in-law. Her room was a disaster, reeking and filled with trash. Sister-in-law suddenly snapped back to her senses and gestured for us to leave, and she closed the door in our faces. I exchanged puzzled looks with the staff member. Later, I was unsure how to approach the subject with her, and before I knew it, the day of the family meeting was drawing near. "My sister won't come. She says she can't take the place of our parents." I couldn't say no, so I agreed to attend with her. "If you don't mind me asking, did your mom have a hard time?" Out of nowhere, sister-in-law directed this question at Mom, who replied, "Yes. After my husband passed away, we found out about his debt. We lost the house and it was hard for the kids." "But why do you ask?" With a spiteful smile, sister-in-law said, "Well, considering you're living in this small, multi-unit housing with cheap furniture that looks like it costs $10 and cups from a dollar store, I can see you're struggling financially." Mom looked down in shame. "I'm sorry." Seeing Mom apologize made me incredibly sad, and I felt compelled to retort to sister-in-law, "I find this home very comfortable. I'd rather live modestly than throw money on pointless decorations. Today I learned that Reina was raised in a household that values that, and I'm happy about it." My mom's eyes welled up with tears at his words. Sister-in-law glared at the three of us, then left without a word. Now it was my turn to go to his family home for a family meeting. Sister-in-law was there again. It was his family home, so it wasn't strange for her to be there, but given her recent attack on my mom, I braced for another one. I greeted his parents and sister-in-law and was warmly welcomed by his parents.
It's such a joy to have a young lady like you become Hugo's wife.
Absolutely, such a charming young woman you are.
Upon hearing the parents' words, sister-in-law turned away and said,
Isn't Raina a bad fit for our family? I visited her home the other day, and they're struggling financially. She even worked at a hostess club.
Mother-in-law seemed alarmed by sister-in-law's words.
A hostess club? Is that true, Raina?
At that mention of a hostess club, father-in-law's face also changed abruptly. They, like him, seemed to have a very negative perception of such jobs. Yet, ironically, sister-in-law had worked in a hostess club herself. I wonder if his parents are aware of this. Do they know about the bullying I'd experienced or the ugly love stories of infidelity and cheating that sister-in-law had shared? Or that she lives in a messy room littered with garbage or engages in borderline stalking behavior?
Got nothing to say?
Then you might as well leave. Don't ever come back here. Sister-in-law, listen. Sister-in-law cut me off with a smile.
This house is big. Do you need directions to the door?
That was the last straw. Fine, let's call off the engagement.
What?
Sister-in-law looked surprised at my unexpected response. I hesitated for a moment, then spoke decisively. The biggest concern I have about marrying Hugo is you, sister-in-law. What are you talking about?
You also worked at a hostess club, didn't you?
Hugo seemed visibly distressed as he spoke.
I've heard everything from Raina. What are you doing in Boston, sis? Not just working at a hostess club, but also stalking men you meet there? Living in a garbage-filled room?
Sister-in-law looked startled at her brother's words, then turned to me. I looked right back at sister-in-law, who was glaring at me. What are you talking about? Hostess clubs, stalkers, a messy home? Sister-in-law clapped her hands and said,
Oh, you mean Raina? When she used to work at a hostess club, always strutting around in those revealing outfits showing off her back and chest?
Why do you know about my clothes? I said that and quietly placed some photographs on the table. The photos featured people I had worked with at the hostess club. Sister-in-law was among them, front and center, wearing the very kind of revealing outfit she just described. My in-laws were shocked, speechless even. Just as sister-in-law started to muster up an excuse, someone arrived at the front door.
Nice to meet you. I'm Leo, Raina's younger brother.
My brother was the bartender at the bar sister-in-law had taken me to. He said he'd been listening to our conversation at the counter that day.
I wouldn't normally eavesdrop, but I'd heard from my sister about some concerns with her future sister-in-law.
He said this and then played a voice recording of sister-in-law's real conversation. Upon hearing it, mother-in-law exploded.
What are you doing? Again in Boston? Wearing that kind of outfit?
Mother-in-law kept questioning her daughter through tears, repeating why over and over. I looked at my fiancé anxiously, but he held my hand tightly, reassuring me. Seeing her mother's tears, sister-in-law also started crying. Father-in-law remained silent, looking down with clenched fists.
Sis, sell your Boston home and come back here.
Sister-in-law seemed to realize her family now knew everything, and nodded at her brother's words. After that incident, sister-in-law teamed up with father-in-law to clean her room. It took them a few days, but they got it done. I offered to help, but he said,
Let Dad handle it. In a way, it's his penance.
The reason he and his family are so against jobs like working at a hostess club, turns out father-in-law had an affair years ago with a woman in that line of work. Nearly tore the family apart and left a lasting scar. Later, my sister-in-law, who moved to Boston with me, unbeknownst to me, started working in a hostess club. She ended up being conned by one of our male customers and was deeply hurt. I was shocked. This wasn't the first time sister-in-law had gone off the rails.
My sister gets lonely easily. Boston is not her scene. Meeting you, Raina, made me realize that state she's in. Thank you.
I asked him about something that had been bothering me. Last time sister-in-law took me to the bar where my brother works part-time, she said she sleeps with you at night. Is that true? He burst into laughter and said,
No way, that's her lonely imagination talking. Absolutely not.
Sometime later, I found out that sister-in-law had left Boston with father-in-law after cleaning up her room. That removed the only concern I had about marrying him. We decided to have our wedding near his family home. I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone's happy faces on that day.